Not to force a program on.
Is he coming tonight? Is he?
I don't know.
Cheers. Thank you, sir. You got a program?
Sorry.
Unless it was a very good night or a bad night. You'd have remembered, wouldn't you?
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to this glittering occasion in beautiful downtown Bloomsbury. Tonight, a host of celebrities sadly couldn't make it, but we do have one or two out-of-work comics and washed-up television personalities who've kindly agreed to help out instead. Speaking of which, my name's Angus Deaton. It's not my full... Thank you very much. It's not my full name, of course, which is Big Angus Deaton. On account of my Rambo-like features and the chilling air of quiet violence that hangs about my body, even in repose, and especially when naked. Anyway, I'm here with some rather bad news, which is that Arthur Smith is top of the bill, but some rather good news, which is that he can't make it. However, he has faxed through, bless him, 3 jokes to tell on his behalf, which he feels are an appropriate and coruscating comment on the nature of liberty versus false imprisonment. The first one is, why does my scrotum look 90 years older than the rest of my body? Thank you to Arthur for that one. The second is, doctor to patient, bad news, you've got Alzheimer's disease and leprosy. Patient, oh well, at least I haven't got Alzheimer's disease. And finally, I entered a marathon the other day. It was terrible, chocolate and peanuts all over my knob. So how can we ever thank him? Now, it is a regulation of the theatre that I mentioned the fire exits, apparently, so if we'd all just pay attention for a moment. There are no fire exits. Thank you. I've also been asked to remind people with mobile phones how stupid they look when they walk down the street having a conversation, and also to switch them off during the show, along with any bleepers. And finally, it is apparently, according to a BBC survey, which was published only recently, the attention span of the average audience is only 3.5 minutes, after which people's minds tend to wander off onto other subjects, by far the most popular of which, apparently, is sexual fantasies. I therefore make no apology for the immense joy that we're about to bring you. Speaking of sexual fantasies, it's time now to introduce to you the compere of this evening. Please welcome the man they're already calling Mr. Comedy. Sorry, Mr. Hardy. Please welcome the great and good Jeremy Hardy.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. I'm just adjusting myself slightly. Now, as you're probably aware by now, this evening is a benefit, and the money will be shared out between the Bridgewater 4 campaign, which you may know about, and the East Ham 2 campaign, which you may not know about. The East Ham 2 campaign, East Ham 2 case, luckily has been referred to the Court of Appeal, which is why we're channeling most of the energies and concentrating at the moment on Bridgewater, and you've all got various homework assigned to you on your seats, which you've got to read and act upon. And there's a big foyer with book signings, and there's stalls with various information about the cases and all sorts of homework for you to do during the interval. And there's a bar till 1 o'clock in the morning, which is the main thing. So, and the roads are completely flooded, so you can't go home anyway, so we'll all just squat the gaff and turn it into a People's Republic. So that's good. As I say, the East Ham 2 campaign, we're very pleased that the East Ham 2, I know it sounds a bit stupid, all these numbers, but I mean, it's the only way of keeping it brief, because their names are Prem Sivalingham and Sam Kullasingham, which doesn't fit on a poster, and we've tried. Their case has been referred to the Court of Appeal, we're very glad to be able to tell you, so they should be coming out hopefully at some point next year. Now, what happened in that case was, it was a very odd case, because it was basically the jury the jury's fault, because the jury completely cocked this one up. I mean, usually you can blame judges and barristers and police officers and things like this, but in this case, the jury really made an arsehole of a decision. But I have to say, it's not surprising to me, because I've actually done jury service. And I have to say, it is a scary thing. Some of you may know the wonderful Sidney Lumet film, 12 Angry Men, with Henry Fonda. Do you, yes? Well, it's on every day. You must know it, surely. Now, the only fault in that film is that on a real jury, everybody is the Ed Begley character. All the film buffs laugh politely, pretending they know what the fuck I'm talking about. They all run home, look it up in Halliwells. But what I'm saying is, the way juries are selected is a completely fair process by which they select from an abstract and totally random and representative cross-section of lower middle-class suburban bigots. And it is extraordinary. You're sitting around with these people and they're saying, well, how much longer are they going to keep us here? I mean, my mind's made up, frankly. This is preposterous. I mean, it's completely obvious to me. I mean, really. I mean, what could the defence possibly pull out of the hat now? Well, don't you think we should wait until we hear what he's been charged with? Nah. I mean, look at him. I expect he's no stranger to this situation. I bet he's been in this court dozens of times. Well, I expect he has. That one's a judge. That's why we don't have black judges in this country, because most juries would convict them. And you have to sit through all this crap while people with bath mats on their heads speak Latin. But there is crack to be had. I mean crack in the very old-fashioned sense of the word. There is crack in the modern sense, but it's usually exhibits and it's all sealed up and it's put in front of you so you can say, good heavens, so that's what drugs look like. You know. And, but you can have a laugh as well. If you're bored, you can ask a question, write it down, and it's handed to the judge. I asked the judge, don't you think you're getting a bit old for this sort of thing? But after the judge has done his summing up, you go off into your little room, and that's where you have to consider your verdict. Now, I was actually brilliant. I have to say, I did get the bloke off in this case. And I was brilliant. I played the Henry Fonda role perfectly. Unfortunately, I played the Henry Fonda role from On Golden Pond. But it's good. It's just inappropriate, you know. But you've got to fight, because these people are just ready to convict. They're just ready to convict. And, you know, there's this stuff called circumstantial evidence, which is just old bollocks. When there's no case, you dig up stuff like your O-level results and things like that. Or GCSEs, I should say, to the young people. And, young people, you don't know you're born, you really don't. It's a stupid expression. If people didn't know they were born, they'd be like this. I can't believe it, though. These days, you see young people in flares. It's only because they're too young to have been emotionally scarred by them the first time round. Those of us who lived through the 1970s never want to see anything like that happen again. But what I'm saying is, you see, and the jury's got all this circumstantial evidence, and they're all sitting around and they're saying, well, it doesn't look good, does it? It doesn't look good. I mean, what was he doing with all that money on him? £35 in cash. If he's not a drug dealer, why doesn't he keep it in the building society? Think of the interest he's losing. It doesn't stand up. And they say, well, I mean, he says he owed this man to a man he was going to pay him back in a nightclub at 11:30, but no one's still up at 11:30. I hate those people. Petty bourgeois, Daily Mail reading little fascists. They are the backbone of fascism. The terrible thing about the Daily Mail is the people who read the Daily Mail actually think it's a good paper. People who buy The Sun know it's bollocks with tits in. They know that. But people who buy the Mail think it's quality journalism, and they say, well, here's a very interesting article that might interest you. It's a piece about the need for a military crackdown on people with freckles. We wanted to humiliate the scene shifters tonight, and we were trying to think of all kinds of revolting, gross sort of panties and things like that, and things. But we went for legal wigs and gowns, in case you thought the barristers were taking over the gig. These are authentic clerk of the court costumes actually being worn tonight. Are you all right, loves? Are you coping?
So far, yes.
That's marvellous. Aren't ordinary people marvellous, the way they cope with things? I often think it must be ghastly for people who aren't celebrities, but I think they do a marvellous job, I really do. In our possession is a completely genuine, this is true, a completely genuine West Midlands Police training manual. Now, the West Midlands Police did actually use this training manual until it had been leaked out, and then they were so embarrassed they did stop using it. And I have to stress, I'm not pissing you about. This is a completely genuine training manual of the West Midlands Police, circulated to other forces around the country. And so, to explain that to you, as you're about to find out how weird it really was, this training manual, please welcome Chief Inspector Philip Jackson and Detective Sergeant Jonathan Barlow.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've received a document from the West Midlands Police Interview Development Unit, which will help us all to recognise when people are not telling the truth. Now, DS Barlow here has kindly agreed to volunteer to illustrate the various points by impersonating a suspect. Right. Deception signals. Detecting lies is not an exact science. However, there are verbal and non-verbal indicators of deception. Many of the deception signals are already known to detectives, but others are seen by the interviewer and interpreted as gut feelings, instinct, or sixth sense. The interviewer, in debriefing the interview, says to himself, I know he's lying, but I can't put my finger on it. It is essential to be able to establish truth or falsehood at an early stage. Deception signals can be verbal or non-verbal. Non-verbal deception indicators. A. Posture. 1. Truthful. Sits upright in chair. Leans forward on occasion. Adopts an open and relaxed posture. 2. Deception. Slouch in chair. Rigid posture. Cross arms. Elbows tucked into body, rapid changes of posture. Runner's position. B. Gestures and movement. The liar often retreats from a threatening situation. E.g., 1. Moves chair away from interviewer. 2. Attempts to stand up or leave. If the latter occurs, the best policy is for the interviewer to remain seated and continue as if occurrence had not happened, and say, look, John, what I am about to say is very important. Why don't you take a seat and listen? It is essential for him to return to his seat. Whilst he remains standing, the chances of confession are nil. C. Significant posture changes. Rubbing and wringing of hands, licking of lips, pulling or hand to nose or ear, scratching, stroking, picking and pinching, clearing of throat, coughing and sniffing, sighs and yawns, nail inspection, wiping sweat from hands, brow, neck, leg bouncing, probing body orifices. D. Grooming gestures, e.g. adjusting or cleaning of glasses. Dusting, thread pulling, Lint picking. Lint picking. E. External gestures, toying with objects. Smoking chewing gum. Oh, no, sorry. Smoking. Chewing gum. F. Facial expressions. 1. Fear. Pale face, dilated pupils. 2. Anger. Reddening of face, tight jaw. 3. Acceptance. Very sad look. Head down, etc. 4. Defiance. Stare. Head cocked to one side. 5. Pleasure. Laughing at interviewer. Smirking. Smirking. G. Eye contact. Windows to the soul. Liars tend to avert gaze. They believe guilt can be seen. But different cultures, different rules. Blacks tend to maintain eye contact, and this can be mistaken for arrogance. H. Face colour changes. 1. Pale, associated with guilt. 2. Blushing. Reddening amounts to anger or embarrassment. 3. Perspiration. Excessive is indicative of guilt.
Philip Jackson and Jonathan Barlow there. And meanwhile, the lovely scene shifters are moving this stuff. Look at the deftness. The professionalism of the way this show is run is so slick. It's almost sick-making, isn't it? Look at the way that... Look, that's done. Look, brilliant. They were trained by the Japanese capitalists, that's why. They do. They live in a work camp 9/10 of the year. Except that you can't divide a year into tenths, can you? I'm talking bollocks, obviously, but that's fine. That's fine. That's my message from Lord Denning. Done. Okay. There is actually one message I would like. This is a genuine message. That was a completely genuine thing, that. You probably knew that. It was actually a completely genuine thing. This is a message which says, I'm sorry I'm unable to be with you. I'm even sorry that Jim and the others can't be either. I'm looking forward to next year. Hopefully we'll all be around for the big celebration. Best wishes, Tony Robinson, who you might know as Baldrick in Blackadder. So that was very nice. So thank you to Tony for that. We have various guests of honour tonight in the audience, and I'll be telling you who they are as the evening goes on. We have at least 3 of the Birmingham Six and maybe more, who gladly, after very many years, have their freedom. I'm now going to introduce to you somebody else who, after even more years, finally got her freedom, and who's going to read to you now. So please welcome Judy Ward.
Good evening. I'm here to read a little of my book. I've read it. It's very boring. I'm not going to bother. I'll tell you a story instead. Prison can be an awful, daunting place for somebody, even when they're guilty. And I just thought I'd like to tell you a little story about how sometimes the sense of humour in prison sort of overrides your situation. In prison, you if you want to complain about anything, you write to the Home Office and you send what is called a petition. And it says, "Dear Sir," on top or whatever. And so you write this little petition and they send you back this answer, and it's usually no anyway. And so I sent this petition one day after many years in H-Wing, and I thought to myself, I'm fed up with this place, I want to go somewhere else. So I wrote to the Home Office and I asked them to go various places, and they said, no, you can't go because you're a Category A top security prisoner. and unless we get another female wing that holds Category A women, you can't go. So I thought, fair enough. And then one day I sat down and wrote a petition to them. I said, well, I've just heard about this guy, I don't know him myself, I said, but I've heard about him. He's called Rudolf Hess, and he's presently being held in Spandau in Germany. Now, this guy, as I understand it, is Category A, top security prisoner, and he's got this great big prison all to himself, and surely he'd like a little bit of company, and, you know, he must be quite bored on his own, and, you know, I could do with a change, and probably he could do with a new face, and, you know, why don't we go there and we can share our thoughts together of prison and things like this, and I sent it off, and after a few weeks, the answer came back from the Home Office, and it said, Dear Miss Ward, we have carefully and sympathetically considered your petition, but unfortunately, you can't go to H-Wing as you are not a German citizen. And so I was stuck there, and stuck there for years, unfortunately, but never mind. And that's really, I think, my 3 minutes is up. Thanks. Bye.
Judith Ward. I called her Judith then because she hates being called Judith, so we just do that to wind her up. She likes to be called Judith. Oh, look, a lectern behind me. Bless you for doing that. I'd just like to read you something that Judy wrote. This is a message to me that Judy wrote, because Judy's book, which she will be signing, she's got work to do in the foyer. She'll be signing during the interval and after the show. And this is a message that Judy wrote when I went to her launch. For Jeremy, with much love to you, you old toe rag, and you're no good at comedy neither. Love from Judy. And that, I think 18 years wasn't long enough, frankly. But as you know, there are a few people in the legal profession who are good people, and I'm going to introduce you to one now. And not only is he a QC, but also a very funny man. And I'm sure you'll be familiar with Rumpole of the Bailey, so I'm going to introduce you to the man who created and wrote the series Rumpole of the Bailey. Please welcome John Mortimer.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. I've got 8 minutes to do it, and I don't know what you can do in 8 minutes, really. I thought I could perhaps just take you briefly through my legal career. I was a barrister for about 30 years until I came to my senses, and I was born into the divorce court. My father was the doyen of the divorce bar. He was the most famous divorce barrister of his day. So that in the nursery, instead of the story of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, I used to get the Duchess and the Seven Co-Respondents. And my father used to come home absolutely flown with his triumphs in the divorce court and sit on the end of my bed and tell me how well he'd done in court. One day he gave me a wonderful line which I was able to use in a play I wrote about him. He sat on the end of the bed and he said, John, terrific day in court. Managed to prove adultery by evidence of inclination and opportunity, he said. He said, you know, really the only evidence we had was a pair of footprints upside down on the dashboard of an Austin 7 motor car. Parked in Hampstead Garden suburb. Well, during the course of his legal career, my father went blind. Those may have read about him will know. And he used to travel up to the law courts every day from the house in Henley-on-Thames, where I now live. And my mother had to sit beside him in the carriage of the Great Western Railway, reading out all this terrible evidence in divorce cases. And she used to be reading, you know, all about male and female clothing scattered about rooms in the Ritz Hotel and stains on the bed sheets. And by that time, my father had grown deaf as well as blind. So he used to say, speak up, Kath. He'd just say, stains on the bed sheets, Don. And the train would grind to a halt somewhere round Slough, and the entire first-class carriage would fall absolutely silent, listening to the ever-diminishing and even more embarrassed tones of my mother, in the faint hope of catching the name of some close friend or relative. Well, I grew up, and finally I followed my father's footsteps into the divorce court, and I became a divorce barrister. And there was a time when practically everyone I knew was someone I'd divorced. Now everyone I know is a child whose custody case I lost. But if you can picture me in my 20s, a slim, slender, handsome, upwardly mobile divorce barrister. And I used to leave the house. I'd had a terrible row with my wife. I was bleeding at the nostril. I was torn at the shirt. I staggered down the stairs. All the children were suffering from infectious diseases. The au pair girl was pregnant and had left home. I opened the front door, great mass of bills. The mortgage had been foreclosed. The bank overdraft had been cancelled. The car had been stolen. I thumbed a lift to my chambers in the temple. I sank behind my desk, and I was perfectly capable of advising 60-year-old company directors on exactly how they should conduct their married life. Then I took to crime rather late in life. Contrary to popular belief, crime does pay, particularly if you do it on the legal aid. And I met some wonderful judges, which I just take the last 4 of my minutes in telling you about. Down at the Old Bailey, there was a wonderful judge called Judge Maud. He was very handsome. He had beautiful white sideburns. He had little gold half glasses. He always used to adjourn the court at 11:30 every morning for a glass of chilled Chablis and a little nibble of Stilton cheese. And he had to sentence a totally drunk Irishman who'd been rightly accused of peeing down the stairs at Leicester Square Tube Station, indecent exposure, vile and obscene language, insulting the police. And he leant forward and said, "I'm going to take a very unusual and merciful course with you, my man." And the man in the dock said, "God bless your holiness, may your shadow never grow shorter," whatever he said. And Judge Maud said, "I'm going to place you upon probation." And the man said, "Oh, God bless your worthiness." And he said, "But I place you upon probation on one condition and one condition only." And the man said, "Anything, I'll do anything." He said, "Never touch another drop of alcohol for the rest of your natural life." And the man said, "Never, not a drop, your holiness, shall pass my lips." And Judge Maud said, "Yes, but by nothing," he said. "I mean absolutely nothing," he said. "Not even the teeniest, weeniest little dry sherry before your dinner," he said. It was also Judge Maud who had to sentence 2 men who'd been found in an attitude of unusual friendliness under Waterloo Bridge, which was at those distant days illegal. And Judge Maud looked at them over his little glasses, and he said, "You men," he said, "have been found guilty of a most terrible act." He said, "A most awful act, which down history has made strong women vomit and men faint," he said. And he said, "And what makes it so much worse," he said, "you chose to do it under one of the most beautiful bridges in London." There is a gloss to that story which I don't believe to be true, which suggests he added, "You 2 men should go away and pull yourselves together." I always used to defend some books which were lucky enough to get the attention of Mrs. Whitehouse, who rushes out and buys anything which is liable to cause her extreme discomfort. And I defended a book which you may all know, a book called The Mouth and Oral Sex. And we defended it before a judge, who will be nameless, and a lady novelist came and gave evidence that this was one of the most beautiful books, and if she were wrecked on a desert island, apart from the Bible and Shakespeare, The Mouth and Oral Sex would be the one book that she would take with her. And the judge looked at her and he said, "Please tell me, Miss whoever it was," she said, "could you explain to the jury, we've done without oral sex for the last 2,000 years. Why are you suggesting we need it now?" Of course, when you get a judge who says something like that, he's opened the door to you, and we had a very nice time after that saying to the jury, "Poor his lordship." Poor his lordship. Hasn't had oral sex for 2,000 years. But, it's time to stop teasing judges, because some of them are going to put all these wrongs right that we're here for. And I do know one rather nice judge story. It's told by a judge. He tells it about himself, and I'll call him Reg King, because that's not his name. And Reg King was when he was a barrister, somewhere up in the north of England, he defended Bessie, the local brothel keeper. And Reg King had a wife called Doreen, who was one of these large ladies with a sort of one-piece bosom, who was forever ironing. Doreen never did very much except iron. And Reg defended Bessie the brothel keeper, and he got her off, and they stood on the steps of the court, and they were photographed for the Yorkshire Post. And Bessie the brothel keeper said to Reg, Reg, you've done such a wonderful job, and to reward you, any time you feel like it, come down to my house and have one free, on the house. So Reg goes back terribly pleased, and there's Doreen with her one-piece bosom ironing. And little Reg comes in, pleased as punch. He said, I had a wonderful day in court, Doreen. Doreen irons, absolutely no reaction. He said, I was defending Bessie the local brothel keeper. No reaction. You may see a picture of me and Bessie on the steps of the court on Yorkshire Post. She's kissing me and thanking me very much. No reaction from Doreen. He said, and Doreen, you know what she promised me? No reaction. She promised me if ever I felt like it, I could come down to her house and have one free on the house. So Doreen doesn't look up. She goes on ironing, and she says, Reg, she said, I know what you should do. You finish up your tea, and then you go down to Bessie's house and disappoint some other woman. Well, that's enough about judges. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening.
John Mortimer QC, about to put all stand-up comedians out of business. I think all right, you don't have to agree with me. I was just being smarmily slick and show businessly supporting of other artists. Oops, now I've broken this. Oh, that's a fucking good start. I've broken the microphone. Damn. I mentioned hell earlier. Actually, somebody who's quite keen on the idea of hell is the Secretary of State for Education, John Eraserhead Patton. I'm going to have to hold this because I've broken it. And now, Mr. Patton did rather worry me from the... I'm going to take it... no. Bugger, I've broken it. I can't do me gestures because I've got to... Oh, there you go. Lovely. So professional. When John Patton became Secretary of State for Education, he did say that the problem with children today is that they no longer believe in hell. And I thought, well, do any of us believe in hell? Do we really believe that the souls of the damned are lost and trapped forever in the bowels of the earth, like our nation's reserves of coal? And there's all this talk now about sin, because society, frankly, it is falling to pieces, and there is an awful lot of crime. People are now talking about sin again. The religious fundamentalists are regrouping, and everyone's going a bit weird about the whole thing. Now, I thought I'd investigate sin. Now, you've got your 7 deadlies, right, which are pride, gluttony, avarice, anger, sloth, flatulence, and armed robbery. Yeah. And you've got your original, which is the original is why babies have to be baptised, because babies are born bad, which is why they scream all night and won't use lavatories. And that's why you cleanse them with holy water, although I prefer baby wipes because then you don't get shit under your nails. But babies are basically born bad. The idea is that human beings are basically bad people until society gets a grip on them and makes them controlled. And, the idea is you take away society and you're left with a lot of ruthless, natural, wild hunters. Now, you'll agree with this if you've ever seen a pensioner in a jumble sale. Although, of course, the socialist view is that the jumble sale has forced the pensioner to behave in that way. And the anarchist view of a jumble sale is that it's hard to get near the trestle tables when you've got a dog on a piece of string. But, you're probably asking me, well, Jeremy, what was the original sin? Because it was all a very long time ago now. Well, basically, you've got Adam and Eve in the Bible, right? And they're bollock naked, right, at this point. They haven't got the fig leaves, they're completely naked. And Adam knew Eve, which actually means Adam, shagged Eve. But it doesn't say shagged, because shag just sounds like a biblical character, doesn't it? Shag begat Nob. So it says Adam knew Eve, you see. And according to Genesis, by which I mean the first book of the Old Testament, not the appalling 70s rock group, which Peter Gabriel did well to leave when he did, not knowing the old baldy fucker was going to steal his voice. Like the Little Mermaid, wasn't it? No other parents, you've not seen the Little Mermaid. I've seen it hundreds of times, man. But what I'm saying is you've got Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Now, Eve is in the garden, right, hoeing or something, and along comes the serpent, right? And she tempts her to eat of the tree of knowledge, and then this is when they become aware of the nudity for the first time and put on the fig leaves. So you've got Eve's there, and the serpent comes along and goes, Eve. And she says, bugger me, a talking snake. It goes, you get puppets in this show yet. Look, see? Eve, hath not the Lord... Hath? What do you mean, hath? Don't take the pith, it's not my fault I'm a serpent. Hath not the Lord said, you may eat of any tree in the garden? Yes, serpent, all but one, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because if we eat of that, we will surely die. Pesticides or something. Nah, the Lord's only saying that because if you eat it, you'll become gods like him. Do you mean that God lied to us? Yes. Bastard, give me some of that fruit. So she eats the fruit, and then she says, this is lovely, they're lovely. She says, oi, Adam. And he says, bugger me, a talking rib. And over comes Adam. Not justifying it, I'm just explaining it. Over comes Adam, and she's become aware of nudity. So she says, Adam, I can see your bollocks. And he hasn't, so he says, what bollocks? And she says, never mind that, have some of this fruit. And he eats it. He says, cool, that's lovely. You haven't got any knickers on. And she says, oh, bugger me. And he says, isn't that forbidden? She says, not until Leviticus. And so they eat of it, and then they're both aware of their nudity, and they put the fig leaves on. Now, most people, these guys are 2 or 3 days old. Most people don't become truly revolted by their naked bodies till they're over 30. But these guys are. And God finds out, and God is livid, because scrumping was taken very seriously in those days. And he banishes them from the garden, which is a bind, because Adam's just put in a row of tomatoes. And so they are banished as a punishment. And God says to them, if you stay here, you may eat of the tree of life and become immortal. Although Adam does go on to live for 930 years. So he does sort of give God the finger in a way, which is nice and touching point. Well, you've heard from a barrister, you've heard from an ex-prisoner, so now I think it's very important that you should actually hear from a judge. So please go completely and utterly mad for Lord Justice Julian Clary.
Gerald Arthur Fallguy, you have been found guilty of a most heinous offence. Oh, no, I'm sorry, we haven't done the verdict yet. Yes. Summing up. Here we are. Members of the jury, it is now my duty to sum up before you retire to consider your verdict, and the clerk says the court will rise, which is always a big moment for me. The defendant is accused of 48 counts of murder, conspiring with persons unknown to commit offences unknown, and escaping from a Group 4 security bicycle on the way to the court. The case for the Crown was put admirably by the leading advocate and future judge, Binky Patterson de Winter. You may think that such a talented and busy man would hardly waste his time attempting to prosecute a man if that man were not guilty. That, of course, is a matter for you to decide. Although, if, like me, you were at school with Binky, you'll know that he's as fine a figure of a man as ever slipped into a wig and gown. I shall now summarize the evidence. Don't worry if you get confused. Just a legal formality. Let us deal first with the conspiracy charge. It is possible that you are unfamiliar with the offence of conspiring with persons unknown to commit offences unknown. But it's a measure of the danger which the Crown Prosecution Service believes the defendant poses to the public that they only thought of the offence this morning. I had to be convinced that it was right to allow this new charge to be brought. So at lunchtime, I asked counsel for the prosecution to enter my private chamber. Which is enough to convince most people. Mr. Patterson de Winter submitted to you, as he does to me on a good day, that the fact... Hurry along, please. That the fact that both the co-conspirators and the offences are unknown cannot be dismissed as coincidence. He told you it all fits, which is certainly my experience. As to the charge of escaping from a Group 4 tandem, the defendant claims that he fell off at a traffic lights. He said he simply slipped out of the saddle, but failed to produce any evidence that convinced me of having been rammed from behind. And now to the most serious charge, that of murder. You heard from a fellow remand prisoner of the accused, Charlie the Narc, Wisconsin, who told you he confessed to me with no remorse and described in exact detail how he carried out whatever it is you're fitting him up with. The defense contests that Mr. Wisconsin is not a reliable witness, but you may well think that if he were not entirely trustworthy, prison staff would not let him run a casino from his cell. However, it is alleged that Mr. Wisconsin is a paid, not to say salaried, informer. This is a serious accusation. A backhander cannot be tossed off lightly. Because it involves the greasing of palms. Mr. Morgan's evidence is therefore inadmissible, and you must disregard it, although a copy of it will be posted in the jury room, so you can disregard it at your leisure. We also heard from Police Constable Love Truncheon, who I hope won't be too embarrassed when I compliment him on the clarity and convincing nature of his testimony, a firm, honest jaw, and a complexion to die for. Constable Love Truncheon has described the interrogation of the accused thus. I asked Mr. Fool Guy, sounds rather like the previous witness. Maybe they're related. I asked Mr. Fool Guy. Silence, please. I asked Mr. Fool if his cappuccino was hot enough, and he replied, "Oh, Constable, a man like me don't deserve a lovely cup of coffee like this after what I've done." I am a proper mass murderer and no mistake. He then wrote out a confession and signed it in his own blood, but a freak gust of wind blew it out the window and it was eaten by a dog. Enough to convince any reasonable person, you may think. However, counsel for the defense, a renowned and accomplished communist and enemy of the state, has alleged that excessive force was used in the apprehension of the accused. But ask yourselves, members of the jury, ask yourselves, is it excessive to use only 4 helicopter gunships to arrest a man asleep in a deck chair? Might he not have been high on pot? Or magic aubergines? A man can be asleep one moment and the next moment he can be lunging at you with a blunt instrument. Believe you me. The defense case rests on a single piece of evidence. Counsel has argued that it is impossible for the accused to have stabbed these 48 people to death in Forest Hill on the night of July the 2nd, because 42 of them are still alive. And the other 6 are fictional characters from the novels of Jackie Collins. But I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, who is Jackie Collins? And as to the 42 sworn affidavits from victims who claim they are unscathed, have never met the accused, and were all at their homes in Canada on the night of the incident, well, I think, don't you, that says more about their courage in the face of this savage and frenzied attack than it does about the supposed innocence of the defendant. You will now retire to consider your verdict. I thank you.
This is being videoed. You may be wondering why it's being videoed. It's being videoed for the men, and we've got the crew giving their services for the men, so they are actually allowed to watch videos in prison, and so they will be seeing you, showing your appreciation. So please, at this moment, could you all show your appreciation for the Bridgewater 4 and the East Ham 2? Right. Actually, you show too much appreciation because that's going to upset all the artistes now that you actually prefer prisoners to show business personalities. You may notice that, I've got a bio. Why am I holding a fucking bio? I'm losing my mind. I am losing my mind. I had to read that stuff out from a piece of paper because when you hit 30, it all just starts to go, doesn't it? Your stomach just goes, and you just start falling apart, don't you? And like my memory, I used to have a photographic memory. I still have a photographic memory now, but all the heads are missing. And you know you're getting older when you see the Oil of Ulay adverts and you think, oh, that looks like good stuff, doesn't it? And you're watching Top of the Pops. You're watching Top of the Pops and you're going, well, it all sounds the same, doesn't it? In the old days, we had the Sex Pistols and the Buzzcocks, you know, something with a bit of a tune. I am getting older, and I'm becoming one of those people I never thought I'd be, a mature, grown-up, suburban, property-owning type of a person. You know, like nowadays I find myself putting things in skips. 10 years ago, I was taking them out. I found my first car in a skip. I did, it's brilliant. And, you know, I bought a grown-up car for the first time a couple of years ago. I used to have Beetles, you know, brilliant cars. They didn't work. We could get the roof off. I mean, the roofs aren't meant to come off. It's just the rust. You could just lift them straight off. And the other year, I bought a proper grown-up Ford Escort, and the rationale was I need to be able to get from A to B. And what a pitiful aspiration that is. 10 years ago, I didn't want to go to fucking B. I wanted to go to exotic places like W. And you kid yourself. You say, well, I want different things now I'm over 30. You don't. You want the same things. You just want them delivered, that's all. And you're a grown-up. You find yourself saying grown-up things like, well, it is expensive, but not for what it is. And leave it with me, I'll have to get back to you on that. And kids talk shit, but they talk brilliant shit, passionate, exuberant shit about games and food and television and gravel-related injuries and how they nearly died when they were a baby. Kids don't say basically, or I kid you not. Kids don't invoice you, they ask you for money for sweets. And if you say, how much do you want? They don't say, well, I wouldn't like to put a figure on it at the moment. I'll tell you what, I'll give you a bell later on in the afternoon. And if you won't give them money for sweets, they don't send you a court summons, they just go round all the neighbours saying, will you sponsor me? But now I'm going to introduce to you a very funny comedian indeed, who you will know, you will have seen on Channel 4, and we're very glad to have him with us tonight. Please go completely mental for Sean Hughes.
There you go. Well, thanks for coming along tonight. People sitting in the easygoing ball seats up there. And thanks for sitting in the front row as well, because like obviously it's the second half now, but you had to get the laughter going tonight, you know, because you're polite. English people are polite, and like if you tell a joke and you don't even get it, and you point at someone, they just go, I wish you stopped looking at me. Jesus, I can't concentrate on any jokes here. Stop looking, please. Because people at the back are always cynical. They just get to the gig late, and like if you're going, hey, you're a great crowd, and you can always see the first couple of rows, and you're at the back going, hey, you're a great crowd, and they're going, you've lost it big time since you're on telly. Yes, at least he knows it. The people as well, because we don't like to feel we're alone in the world, so we tend to, if you're with a partner, you tend to look at your partner after a joke to make sure they're getting it as well, you know that. Oh, it wasn't very good, was it? No. He won't be on for long, don't worry. It's nice playing a venue this size as well, because recently I saw U2 at Wembley, and I'm telling you, from where I was sitting, Bono was about that big, you know. And I met him afterwards, and he is that big. He's done well for himself for a little fella, hasn't he? I saw one of those guys in town today, one of those, the end of the world is nigh, you know? Like, what have they got to live for? For Christ's sake, like, their big moment in life is when the big nuclear explosions happen and then go, suckers! And you get the Jesus loves you people as well. They stand there with a big cardboard sign with felt tip pen, Jesus loves you. And like, you know, I think people more or less make up their own mind about their faith. Like as if you're going around town and thinking, geez, I'm not sure anymore now, do I believe? And that's going to swing you, isn't it? Like, Oh, I've made up my mind there. Thanks very much. Like. By the way, G just starts with a J. You might get a couple more people joining in there. They're just an embarrassment to God, really. God must be up there going, he's no friend of mine, Charles. Tell him to piss off. I don't know. I'd like to thank God for fucking up my life and at the same time not existing. Quite a special skill, I think you'll find. No, don't applaud, because that means it's not a really funny joke. You just think, nice idea, like, you know? When you start off doing comedy, you get the applause, you think, oh, they really like that joke. But they didn't, because if you liked it, you go, oh, fuck it! Like, not fucking this. You know, you're going to go, oh, not too good, that one. They just like the idea. Yeah, I'm from Ireland. Ireland's a very Catholic country, as the bishop said to the American lady. Try to keep topical whenever possible. Yeah, no, because like the priests are all messing about. Now, next time you go to confession, the priest says, "What are your sins?" You go, "You first." I won't tell no one. But are there any of the just in case Catholics here? The just in case brigade. The I go to church once a year. Christmas Eve, 11 o'clock. I'm a bit pissed. Midnight Mass, come on, that'll be a real laugh. And you go there and you've forgotten why you're there as well. You go, hey, what's the deal here? Why is everyone here? It's Jesus' birthday. All right. Happy birthday to you. Is he here yet? Happy birthday to you. No, he's too cool. He don't turn up for his own party, like, you know. But having said that, hey, is it my imagination or flippin' hell? Oh, it's my imagination. But I go to church once a year, but I go in April on a Tuesday, because then it's just usually me and the priest. There's a fair chance of a shag that way, like, you know? Come on, it's very romantic. Wine, candlelit, he's wearing a lovely dress. That's very... No, don't plug. I'm a bit of a pool shark as well, actually. Like, you know, I'm like, you know, a little trick you can play if you're so good at pool is I go into a pool hall and I have a game with a stranger and I play really badly, you know, on purpose. And then I say, do you want to make the next game a bit more interesting? And he goes, yeah. So I put a couple of songs on the jukebox and that did the trick. No. Oh, it's crap. But I said to him, you know, do you want to put some money on the next game? Right? And we put, you know, $5 on it or something. And then what you do is you play really crap again, right? And you go home and they don't know you're really good. No, you beat me fair and square. No, you're better than me at everything. Jesus. I guess I'm walking home. He got me bus fare. Yeah, and if you want to make an extra pound for yourself as well, if you're a bit stuck, what you do is you ring up those pizza Hut. You know, if they don't deliver within a half hour, £1 off. And you say, are you doing that offer? And they go, certainly, sir, £1 off. Because a lot of them can't speak properly, like, you know. But I don't want to generalise, but they... And then, like, what you do is you order your pizza and then you report their moped stolen to the police. What kept you in front of the thing? But it's nice that you've left the house as well, because, you know, we don't like to leave the house these days, and you have to, because you want to meet someone and marry them eventually. Because, like, if you stay at home, you're just going to end up marrying the bin man, really, aren't you? Just looking out the window going, hi. Come on in. It'll be great. No punchline there, but that's real life. All right, guys. Flipping heck, I fell over there. And also, it's nice that we have a lot of people in one room and there hasn't been a fight yet. Because London, Friday night, this amount of people, there has to be a fight. You know, people go, oh, this is great. And hey, fuck off! And you know, some people can use bad language and it's quite scary. And you go, yeah, I'm sorry about that, mate, yeah. But I can't do it. I go, hey, fuck off! And people go, ooh! This town ain't big enough, woo! And you know when people get really drunk, they do that aggressive point as well, you know? And then the further they move away, the more aggressive it gets. And then they do that tricky two-step forward. I hate to see them by the time they get home, you know. Wake up in the morning, was I in a fight last night? Was I? The worst one is, like, you know you're in a fight when someone says, what are you staring at? And I would rather someone came up, punched me in the back of the head, you know, oh, right, well, it's over now, thank you very much. Because when someone says, hey, what are you staring at? Palpitations. Oh, I'm in a fight. Flipping heck, I'm in a fight. I hope he hits me soon, because I'm having a heart attack otherwise. Oh, the legs are going, oh, no! Hit me! And some people have weird morals about fighting as well. You get these guys. I was in a bar recently, and I was with a woman, and she said a little too loudly, she said, God, that guy over there, he's a bit ugly, isn't he? Which was unfair, because she had a microphone and everything, like, you know. Everyone had a quick look around. Ooh, yes, yeah. But of course, he turns around to me and says, what did you say? I said, nothing. She did. Fight her. Go on. And of course he says, well, actually, I don't hit women. I go, oh, that's big of you. How about effeminate men? Can we bend the rules ever so slightly there? Vegetarians, any chance? Okay, hit me. If I was on the Titanic, I would have been, women, children, effeminate men, this way! Any vegetarians here tonight? God, we're a feeble bunch, aren't we? Yes! Oh, I said yes, that really took it out of me. Oh. I've been feeling a bit tricky all day, actually. I shouldn't have had that whole lettuce, honestly. It's right through my system, it really does. We say such stupid things as well, you know. Oh, I'm starving, I could eat a horse radish. Half now, half tomorrow, yum, 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 yum. Because, like, you think they're homeless people on the street. Oh, no, they're vegetarians who couldn't make it to the greengrocers, like, you know. Like, oh, I'll just get some apple. Oh, I've come over all funny. Help me, I'm a vegetarian. Help me, I'm a vegetarian. Would you like some money, mate? A plum would be nice. Have you got any vitamins on you? Don't eat meat. Don't eat meat. Hey mate, a dog's just pissed on you. He doesn't know any better. Don't eat him. Don't eat meat. Don't eat meat. Don't eat meat. Oh, eat meat. Or fish. Thank you very much, you've been wonderful. Take care of yourself. Cheers. Thank you. Look after yourself.
Brilliant, Sean Hughes there. There's some more scene shifting going. I'm even older now than I was before. I was talking about how old I was, and I'm older now, and there's bits gone here, because you know as you're getting older, you run your hands through your hair and think, oh no, fuck, don't touch it, it's fine. And I am. And the thing that's really making me feel old, I have to say, is the property, is the house and the garden thing. Because I've got a house and I've got a lawn, and I mow my lawn. And 10 years ago, if I had a lawn, I wouldn't have mowed it. I'd have said, no, fuck it, man, let it grow, it's happy, you know, it's beautiful. And I don't want to be one of those people with a planned out future and a pension all sorted out and everything and grown up and proper insurance. I don't want it. I don't want to be one of those people with an instant saving super gold portfolio account where they give you a shiny folder for your statements with a picture of old people laughing on the cover. And you can decide whether the bank gives you interest annually or just keeps it for themselves. And they say you can open a building society account for as little as £1. But what's the point? If you've only got £1, I should think you're likely to get at it quite quickly, really. But I must say, you're probably thinking we're a ragtaggy bunch of old lefties on tonight, but I must say that there are a lot of noble liberals who are supporting these campaigns. And I do like liberals because they're constantly outraged, because they're not jaded. Left-wingers are jaded. Liberals say, but this is an outrage and a disgrace. We should write to the Home Secretary and quick, write to the local paper. And socialists just say, yeah, but I mean, I knew they'd do it because they're all bastards, aren't they? And so, you know, the Liberals are all writing to the Home Secretary, and Socialists are going, yeah, but it's a conspiracy, isn't it? And the Liberals turned out for the miners. They were brilliant. They actually wrote out their own banners for the miners, and not taking the normal NUM or SWP ones. They wrote out their own ones saying things like, please, Mr. Hasseltine, think about what you're doing and reconsider. Which is a bugger of a chant to get behind, I can tell you. But now we have another sketch for you, and I want you to imagine what is going on at this moment in central England.
I've been mugged. Hello? I've been mugged.
Oh, sorry to hear it, love.
Excuse me. This is a police station, is it?
Oh, yeah. The West Midlands Serious Crime Squad. At your service. How may I help you? Have a nice day.
You are a policeman, are you?
No, not exactly. No, not strictly speaking.
Well, who are you then?
Well, you see, I'm from a private security firm, you see. Cop you like. Previously trading under the name of Nick You Quick. A subsidiary of Filth R Us.
Well, where are all the real policemen?
They're all busted. Busting. Busy.
Well, look. I've been violently assaulted and I want to make a statement.
Well, why didn't you say they'd already interviewed you then? Stupid.
Who?
The West Midlands Serious Crime Squad.
They haven't. For God's sake, I've been beaten up. I've got the bruises to prove it.
No, that doesn't sound very likely.
Why not?
Because they're generally trying to leave bruises.
Look, I have not been assaulted by the West Midlands Serious Crime Squad.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, what makes you so special then, Mrs.?
I'm sorry, I just can't believe this. I mean, are you completely insensitive? Are you an absolute moron?
No, because like I said, I'm not a proper policeman.
God, this is insane.
All right, love, all right, come on, calm down, Mrs. Better get you to fill in a form. Look, here's one. There you are, look, there.
What's this?
It's just a formality.
But it says confession at the top.
Yeah, right, just to say, just a formality.
And it's black.
Right, amazing, isn't it? You can just sign there, they fill in the rest later. Oh, good evening, Sergeant, hello.
Evening, I say in triplicate. What's all this then?
I've got, what do you call them?
Suspect?
Suspect, right, yeah.
I am not a suspect.
Yeah, they all say that to begin with.
I am a victim.
Most of our suspects say that as well.
There is a difference, you know, between a suspect and a victim.
Don't you try that fancy Jesuitical metaphysics with me, young lady.
Are you a real policeman?
I certainly am. 20 years on the force, numerous commendations, spotless record, and it's my word against yours in court, sunshine.
Officer, I have just been mugged, not 20 yards from this police station.
Well, that would be outside my jurisdiction.
Why?
Well, I'm with the West Yorkshire Force. I'm here to conduct an inquiry into the West Midlands Serious Crime Squad.
Oh, fine. So you're just going to stand idly by and let criminals get away with it?
Well, that's the general idea, yeah. Of course, we will produce a report just for appearances, like.
I'm talking about the man who attacked me.
Oh, right, sorry. Let's see if I can remember the drill. Any witnesses? Gosh, this takes me back.
Well, there's the man who sells papers on the corner. it's possible he saw something.
Oh, sounds tasty. Pull him in and charge him.
All right, Sarge. Calling all cars. This is an APB. St. Victor Bravo. Romeo and Juliet. Well met, Macduff. Mind the gap. Mine's a pint of lager and a packet of crisps, please. Ding-a-ling-a-ling.
Shut up!
Oh.
This is insane. You can't just arrest any old person you feel like without any proof.
Well, that depends. Is he Irish?
I don't think so.
Pity.
Hello.
Hello.
What's all this then?
Are you a local detective?
No, I'm from the Devon and Cornwall Constabulary. Now, how's the inquiry in the West Midlands mob
Oh,
going?
most satisfactory. How's your inquiry into our lot going?
Oh, mustn't grumble.
Can't anybody do something about what's happened to me?
I'm sorry, love. We're all a bit busy helping each other with our inquiries.
I just had a bit of trouble in the cells. It appears that the suspect fell down the steps, interrogated himself in the kidneys, banged his head against the wall, and then hanged himself while unconscious with remorse.
We get a lot of that as well.
You're all totally corrupt.
Young lady, I'll have you know, if there's one thing I cannot abide, and that is a bent copper.
You speak for yourself.
God! What have I got to do to get something done around here? I'd like to put a bomb under the whole bloody lot of them.
Right, sunshine, you're next.
We are going to hear now from another former prisoner who was one of the Birmingham Six. We held two very successful benefits here for the Birmingham Six before they came out, and we held the men's victory celebration show here as well. And lucky we no longer have to have benefits for this man. He's a man who was a prisoner with Michael Hickey and is going to read to you from his book. Please welcome Hugh Callaghan.
Gartree, 1982. Shortly after I came to Gartree, I became friendly with Jimmy Robinson, whose case known as the Carl Bridgewater case. The other men wrongly convicted in that case were Michael Hickey and Vincent Hickey and Pat Malone, who was recently deceased. Jimmy was in his mid-40s, had a strong Brummie accent, and was a very funny man and a friendly man. He was good looking and reminded me of James Coburn. We talked a lot, and he told me over many hours about his life, which hadn't all on the right side of the law. I had good sympathy with him and was totally convinced of his innocence as he was of mine. Jimmy loved football, and we shared many hours talking over classic matches. And when we got on that subject, I was well away. He had all the hassle that we endured, being moved all the time from one cell to another and from prison to prison. When things started to progress on our case, he was sincere in his encouragement and good wishes, though he must have felt it badly. Their case had received some public attention. Michael Hickey's mother was active, and so was Jimmy's wife, Teresa. But compared to the massive campaign conducted on our behalf, the Bridgewater case was attracting little attention at that particular time. The three men's families were alone except for the efforts of Paul Foote, a prominent journalist who wrote a book about the case. Jimmy was shifted eventually to Albany, and he told me lately, it was hell there. Things had changed a lot since I left. A riot, a wholesale destruction, afterwards resulted in prison authorities tightening up all regulations. I shudder to think I would have coped with that. Screws get particularly vindictive after riots, and no prisoner escapes. They can keep up their relationships for months, sometimes years. I also met Michael Hickey, the youngest of the Bridgewater people. He was a tense young man who ached inside. He couldn't accept what had happened to him. To be sensitive soul in a prison is hard enough, but to be innocent and have to endure every day the barbarity of prison and its pure hell. The young man really went through the mill, and the screws were awful to him. Michael holds the invaluable record of the longest rooftop protest in an English prison. It was 90 days. He couldn't have picked a worse time. It was in the depth of a cold winter with hailstones and gales at night. I couldn't sleep myself thinking about this young lad. I could see this shadow moving across the skylight. All he had on was a prison duffel coat and his prison clothes. In the early days of his protest, inmates would tie sandwiches and a flask of hot soup to a rope and pass it up to him from their cell windows. But after a few days, the screws caught them doing this, and they were punished severely for showing some humanity towards a fellow human being in mental and physical distress. The authorities thought it wouldn't last long. That hunger and cold would soon have come down to his senses, but the lad's determination was stronger than any of us give him credit for. I saw young Michael every day while working on the bin party, directly below the rooftops where he was perched. His shouts and calls to us became weaker and weaker. I was deeply disturbed by all this. One day, out of the blue, I heard him call very faintly. I called up to him. "What is it? Do you want to come down, Michael?" I couldn't hear his response, but I knew by his demeanour that he did. I told the assistant governor as he was passing by at that particular time. Michael was returned to the wing very shortly afterwards. The physical and mental stress he had endured told on his face, but I profoundly admired his gutsy determination. Having finished this excerpt from my book, I would like to say these words from this theatre tonight. To Michael, Jimmy, and Vinny, I am sure their families will lay this message on to them. Remember, we had the same setbacks, so be strong, Jimmy, Michael, and Vinny. Also remember, your support is growing all the time. Your solicitor, Jim Nichols, is doing marvellous work on your behalf, along with many good people, to see that justice is done and justice will be done. Thank you, Father. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hughie Callahan. Hughie did mention Michael, Vinny, and Jimmy, and relatives of all the men are here tonight. And also, sadly, of course, Pat Malloy died in prison, and relatives of his are here as well among you. And so now I can safely leave you in the very funny hands of a very funny woman indeed. Please welcome Jo Brand.
Thank you. Hello, I just want to start off by saying I'm sorry that I look a bit rough tonight, but I've been very busy. I've been travelling a lot, didn't have time to change, and my parents weren't very attractive, so hope that sorts it out for you. Now, I'm very pleased to be here tonight because, you know, I do think it's important to sort out your politics very early on in life. For example, you know, I don't buy South African fruit. In fact, I don't buy any fucking fruit at all, to be honest with you. No chocolate in it, no point, that's what I say. But it's been a bit of a joy to me to see the Tories going right down the toilet over the last year. And I think some of that can be ascribed to John Major, who was supposed to have had an affair with a cook. Did he? Well, he may have done, you know, because they say the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Bollocks. Way to a man's heart is through his hanky pocket with a bread knife, if you ask me. Only joking, boys, only joking. And why would you want to know the way to a man's heart anyway? There isn't a fucking cake shop there, is there? No point going. But, you know, I do think it's time we realise what people in the rest of Europe actually thought of us over here, because my brother's actually married to a German woman, and in Germany they think we're absolutely poverty-stricken, you know. And I was over there recently, and my brother's wife's mother said to me, would you like me to send you a food parcel? And I said, yes, because I'm very greedy, indeed. So that's been coming. That's nice. And I have to say, you know, I like to see women getting involved in politics. And I thought it was brilliant when those women went down the mine a little while ago and did that protest for 4 days. Bet they left it nice and tidy, eh? And I was also very pleased when we finally got women priests. And I'd like to point out, actually, that I predicted that in a dream that I had about a year ago, because I actually dreamt I was at the Last Supper, funnily enough, because I like to dream I'm at meals when I'm not actually awake, you know. And Jesus was there, of course, and he was handing out the bread, saying, this is my body, eat this in memory of me. Then he gave out the wine, said, this is my blood, drink this in memory of me. And I piped up and said, isn't there anything for pudding? I'm fucking starving over here, mate. And, oh, you're not sure, are you, about that one? Neither am I, actually, because I did that line in a theatre the other night, and just after I'd said it, a big voice boomed out, will everyone leave the building immediately? And I thought it was God. I was absolutely shitting myself, you know. But feminism has a very bad name these days, doesn't it? If you look on telly or look in the papers, feminists tend to be portrayed as short-haired, fat, wearing dungarees. It's not a feminist, that's a fucking plumber, isn't it, that is? And, you know, feminist doesn't come round your house, fart all afternoon, drink your tea and charge you 50 quid for the privilege, do they? No. And you see, I think we owe a debt of gratitude to particularly the suffragettes at the turn of the century. You know, I couldn't have done what they did. Imagine chaining yourself to some railings and then realising you'd left your fags in the car. You go mad, wouldn't you? But Americans, they're bonkers, aren't they? Waco, what was that all about? What was all the fuss about there? One religious fanatic holding 30 children against their will. In my day, we used to call that Sunday school. Like, the films are so mad at the moment from Hollywood, aren't they? Indecent Proposal, you know, where Robert Redford offers Demi Moore $1 million to sleep with him. And the advert over here, to make you go and see the film, at the end of it said, what would you do? Oh, I don't know. I'd shag him for a fucking tenner. What's all the fuss about there? I have to say, actually, I'm not very good at seducing people. Is that a big surprise? Probably not. So I have to have a lot of sexual fantasies, and my favourite one, actually, is smearing chocolate and cream over my naked body and just being left on my own to eat it. And you see, on the very rare occasions that I do actually get a man in a room on his own, it just seems too good an opportunity to miss, just to punch him in the fucking gob, quite honestly. Boys, I'm joking, I really am. I think men are fantastic, actually, as a concept. And a lot of upsetting things happened, actually, this year, haven't they? Apparently some professor has said there's no such thing as PMT. Fuck, no more shoplifting for us then, girls. And And I've had a bit of a strange year, actually, because I was on tour earlier on in the year, and it is good when you go on tour, you know, because you do go completely mad. You take loads of drugs, get drunk every night, pick up men. It's marvellous. And I was actually up in the northeast, and I did have a really good gig up there one night. Got very drunk, picked this bloke up, took him back to the hotel, having a bit of a shag on the lawn. Fucking hotel slides down into the sea. I couldn't believe it. Did the earth move? It certainly bloody did, darling. One way of getting him to sleep on the wet patch, anyway. Now, I have to say, actually, one thing that does get to me is violence towards women, and I've got a very good idea about how this could be sorted out. I think the government should pass a law for all women to be armed with shotguns. I do, because then, you know, we could go out at night safely, we could shoot rapists, we could shoot muggers, and we could shoot anyone that got on our fucking nerves, really, couldn't we? And we'd like that a lot. But they're not going to do it, are they? Because they're going to say mistakes will be made. Accidents will happen. I mean, for example, you know, you might shoot a skinhead in the leg when you meant to kill the little bastard. So, but you see, football is very violent these days, isn't it? And women's football isn't violent. Why not? Because I don't play it. I think that's the answer, probably. But, you know, let's face it, women's football hasn't got off the ground because men just take the piss out of it, don't they? I think they just assume the woman pops the ball in her handbag and gets her husband to drive her up to the goal on the way to the shops or something. And I've always thought singing in football was very weird. You know, like that song, You'll Never Walk Alone. What an odd sort of song to choose, isn't it, from an old musical? Because I'd like to see them down in the Den at Millwall singing, how do you solve a problem like Maria? How do you catch a cloud and pin it down? Be great, wouldn't it? Because I go to football quite a lot, and I actually got the opportunity a couple of years ago when I was up in Scotland to see Paul Gascoigne playing, and it was brilliant, actually, because I was right down the front. There were thousands of us going, you fat bastard, you fat bastard. Oh, I was going mad. It was brilliant. And then someone tapped me on the shoulder and said, they're shouting at you, actually. I think that's my time. Thanks a lot. You've been fantastic. Have a good night.
Will the owner of the blue BMW, registration number C27HHJ, have a happy life? Well, we hope so. I have another Arthur Smith joke here, unfortunately, which is, why do people who live near the Niagara Falls have ears that stick out and flat foreheads? It's because they wake up every morning and go, ooh, what's that noise? Oh, the Niagara Falls. That's not an easy joke to fact, that one. I'd just like to draw your attention before we move on to a government survey which was published only this week, which reveals that at least 9 out of every 10 people in the country have at some stage in their lives, apparently, masturbated. Now, I don't mean to offend you with this at all, simply to let you know that this means there is consequently more than a 90% chance that the person you're sitting next to tonight is a wanker. In fact, if that person is male, there is evidently a 64% chance that he did so before he came out this evening. And if that person is female, there is evidently a 22% chance that, given the opportunity, she would have liked to watch. Statistics, you see, they can prove anything. Now, it's my unenviable task now to bring down the mood of the show slightly and burst the comic bubble, which is why they've chosen me to do this link and not Jeremy. Earlier in the year, you may have seen a program called Bad Company, in which I portrayed the part of Paul Foote, for which I was proudly nominated as for the BTI Awards for Best Performance in a Non-Acting Role. You won't have to suffer that performance again tonight, because tonight we have the real McCoy, or indeed the real Foote, perhaps the man who's done more to pioneer the cause for which we're all here tonight than anyone else in the country. Please welcome now Paul Foote.
case there's any confusion about it, I'm Angus Deaton. We're here now with the help of all these people to tell the story very, very briefly of what happened in the Carl Bridgewater case. And the story starts on September the 19th, 1978, when Carl Bridgewater, who was a newspaper boy, aged 13, was delivering newspapers to a farmhouse, Yew Tree Farm, near Wordsley in the West Midlands. And he was found later, shot dead, by a single blast from a shotgun. He'd stumbled across a robbery.
The murder inquiry was led by Chief Detective Superintendent Robert Stewart.
I tend to go for the view that the motive was that he could have recognised his assailant. Every police officer involved in this inquiry is absolutely appalled at the viciousness and callousness of this slaying.
And so were the public.
It was a particularly nasty and shocking murder, but even I am surprised at the response we have had from the public for pleas for information.
However, September went by, October, November, and still no breakthrough. The police optimism began to fade.
And then, at the end of November, at a farm at Romsley, Worcestershire, about 3/4 of a mile drive away from Yew Tree Farm, where Carl was killed, there was another robbery. And when the police arrested the gang, they were soon certain that they'd also caught the newspaper boys' killers. The three men, Vincent Hickey, his cousin Michael Hickey, and Jimmy Robinson, together with Robinson's drinking pal Pat Malloy, were all arrested, accused, and stood trial for the murder of Carl Bridgewater in October 1979.
This is the prosecution case against James Robinson, Michael Hickey, Vincent Hickey, and Patrick Malloy.
Pat Malloy confessed to the murder and named the three other men. This is how the confession read.
4 of us had gone to the farm. After a while, I heard a bang from downstairs. I knew that a gun was fired. I went downstairs and the 3 of them were still in the room. I heard Jimmy say, "It went off by accident." I looked, and on the settee I saw the body of a boy. He had been shot in the head. I was appalled and felt sick. I just ran from the house.
Call Helen Johnston.
Helen Johnston, a barmaid, said she'd heard a conversation between Malloy and Robinson.
Jim and Pat were in the pub. They were standing by the jukebox, but it wasn't on. Pat was saying to Jim, "If we're ever caught and seen by the police, you must say that the gun went off accidentally." I heard that, plain as anything.
Call Catherine Guy.
Catherine Guy lived on the same walkway as Jimmy Robinson's flat. When questioned by the police, she picked out Vincent Hickey's picture.
Yes, I'd seen Vincent Hickey going along the walkway to Jimmy and Carol's. I'd seen him twice there.
This suggested what no one else could prove, that Vincent and Jimmy knew each other before the murder. It linked all 4 men together.
Next came Reg Hickey, a relation of Michael and Vincent. He was brought by the prosecution to prove that the men were familiar with the area around Yew Tree Farm.
Yeah, I was taken by the police to look at places where Mike and Vincent and me had done roofing jobs.
And which particular area of work did you point out to the police?
The area around Yew Tree Farm.
There now followed evidence from 2 prisoners, Mervyn Ritter and Brian Sinton.
Prison evidence is the testimony of prisoners as to what their fellow prisoners are alleged to have said about their crimes whilst on remand. As Mr. Justice Drake told the jury,
"I have reminded you more than once, and warned you more than once already, of the dangers of acting on uncorroborated evidence of people such as prisoners."
However,
we call Mervyn Ritter.
I was being transferred the next day, and I asked Jimmy if I could do anything to help, but, I can't give him any help unless I know the truth of what happened.
And having told him that, did you ask him anything?
Yeah, I asked him who murdered the child.
What did he say?
He said it was an accident, Tex.
And Brian Sinton, another fellow prisoner.
Michael confessed to me in the prison shower.
Although communication between Category A prisoners like Michael and ordinary prisoners like Sinton is strictly forbidden by prison rules, on this occasion a shared shower was allowed to take place. Sinton's testimony was by far the strongest evidence against Michael.
Then there was the gun, the murder weapon.
Exhibit 25, a sawn-off single-barrel shotgun. It is the prosecution case that this single-barrel shotgun was the one which killed Carl Bridgewater.
And the owner of the gun was Jimmy Robinson.
Both pairs of men had alibis.
Michael and Vincent said that they'd been at a garage in Birmingham buying a second-hand car at the time of the murder.
But the prosecution said...
Impossible. If you were there at all, it was the following day.
Jimmy Robinson and Pat Malloy said they'd been at Jimmy's girlfriend's house.
But the prosecution said...
There is not a single witness to support this alibi.
So the prosecution case seemed a powerful one, and it became even more powerful when Pat Malloy, one of the 4 accused men, decided not to give evidence, so leaving his confession incriminating all 4 men unchallenged. The verdicts were unanimous.
Guilty.
James Robinson and Vincent Hickey, you have been found guilty of a most foul and terrible crime. You are both sent to prison for life, with a recommendation you both serve a minimum of 25 years. Patrick Malloy, you are found guilty of manslaughter. The sentence upon you is to serve 12 years in prison. Michael Hickey, you were under 17 years of age when this murder was committed, and for that reason I cannot award you a term of imprisonment for life. Therefore, I am ordering that you be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure.
On the day after he was sentenced, Jimmy Robinson wrote,
"The judge might bow me down, but he'll never break me, because I know that for all his wisdom and for all the power of the legal system behind him, he's wrong. He's terribly wrong. And somewhere, as happens very occasionally, the legal system and procedure has gone wrong, drastically wrong. Not much to hang a hope on, you might think, and I don't either. But just knowing that I'm innocent and being done for nothing gives me a perverse kind of gloating feeling that for all their high-sounding words and legal jargon and the smug and clever arguments they've trotted out, they're as thick as shite and they're wrong."
And that could have been the end of the matter. However,
a month later, at the farmhouse next door to Yew Tree Farm, a man called Wilkes was shot dead by a blast from a shotgun while sitting on a sofa. The murderer was the victim's best friend, ambulanceman Hubert Spencer.
an amazing series of coincidences began to emerge, linking Hubert Spencer to the Carl Bridgewater murder.
Spencer drove a blue Vauxhall Viva.
A blue Vauxhall Viva had been seen turning into Yew Tree Farm an hour and a half before Carl was shot.
Spencer wore a uniform.
So did the driver of the Vauxhall Viva, seen turning into the farm.
Spencer was the only man in the whole of the West Midlands who drove a blue Vauxhall Viva and wore a uniform at work.
Spencer had a gun licence and owned a shotgun.
Spencer knew Yew Tree Farm well. He shot rabbits on the farmland and knew the old people who lived there.
He was known to covet the antiques of the farm, being a collector himself.
In fact, Spencer had been interviewed by the police in connection with the Carl Bridgewater murder. But he never mentioned his connection with Yew Tree Farm.
Or that he knew Carl himself. He'd lived 2 doors away from the Bridgewater family.
Despite all these coincidences, there was only one passing reference to the newspaper boy's murder at Spencer's trial for the murder of Wilkes the following summer. Every effort was made by the police, prosecution lawyers, and the judge to keep the 2 cases apart.
So the verdicts of both murder trials appeared to be safe and sound.
But Michael Hickey's mother, Anne Whelan, refused to accept this situation.
She decided to embark on her own investigation. She visited Pat Malloy in prison. Malloy was beside himself with remorse at his failure to give evidence, and in a long string of anguished letters from his prison cell told his story for the first time. He wrote about the complete lack of evidence.
We were all supposed to have set off from these points and started up Old Bangers. Collected a shotgun, blind drunk too, remember, and still got to Yew Tree Farm for 3:35 p.m. to be seen by a witness. Is it likely that literally scores of trained experts following what they termed 4 drunken robbers couldn't find a hair, a print, a button, a footprint, a shred of cloth either at the farm or on any of our clothing?
And he wrote how the confession had been beaten out of him by the West Midlands police.
A bearded man who I think is called Perkins came into my cell and who did ask me about Carl and his death. I was questioned and insulted and called a thick Irish Mick. I was struck in the face several times, which broke my teeth. I was repeatedly asked to sign a statement saying that I was at the farm upstairs robbing it. The meals I received were liberally dosed with salt and I was refused a drink. In the end, I had to cup my hands in the lav basin and flush the toilet to get a drink of water.
Malloy never got a chance to say all this in public. In July 1981, He died of a heart attack in the prison yard.
Michael Hickey was overcome with grief and despair. He wrote a message for Pat Malloy's wreath.
Pat, what can I say that hasn't been said already following your leaving us? But Pat, I know you will still be with us when we finally get the justice we've all been seeking since our wrongful arrest, which has broken the hearts of our family and friends. I only wish you could be here to hear our wrongful convictions put right, because, Pat, we will continue to fight to clear us all, and when that day comes, then I will know that you are finally at peace. I will say goodbye now, Pat, but I want you to know you are sorely missed.
Anne Whelan, Michael's mother, was convinced that the prosecution case against all four men was wrong.
Her 1980 New Year's resolution was to interview all the main prosecution witnesses personally. If there was any new evidence, there was chance of an appeal.
And this is what happened.
Helen Johnston, the barmaid who overheard an alleged conversation between Jimmy and Pat, went on television to say,
I lied where I shouldn't have lied.
Catherine Guy, who claimed to have seen Jimmy and Vincent together before the murder, said,
When I went to Stratford Crown Court to give evidence last year, I didn't recognise Vincent Hickey. I'd never seen him before in my life.
So now there was nothing to link the four men to each other before the murder.
Reg Hickey, who had claimed that the men knew the area around Yew Tree Farm, said,
I lied.
Brian Sinton, the prisoner who gave the most damning evidence against Michael, said,
I lied for an easier time in prison.
This astonishing change in the evidence led to a full Court of Appeal hearing in 1988 and 1989. What happened to Robinson's gun? The prosecution said.
It is not the murder weapon.
What happened to the alibis? The prosecution accepted.
The Hickey cousins were at the Birmingham garage on the afternoon of the murder.
What about Mervyn Ritter, the main witness against Jimmy Robinson? He was proved to be
a congenital pathological liar.
But the appeal judges concluded.
On this occasion, Ritter can safely be relied upon as a witness of truth.
What about Hubert Spencer, who was linked again and again throughout the appeal to the newspaper boy's murder? The judges concluded.
We entertain no doubt whatsoever that Hubert Spencer had nothing to do with the killing of Carl Bridgewater.
No doubt whatsoever.
In March 1989, the judgment was declared.
The convictions are safe and satisfactory. The appeal is dismissed.
But once more, the case refused to go away.
5 top language experts made sworn statements casting serious doubt on Malloy's confession. It emerged that the policeman who had taken down the confession, Detective Constable John Perkins, now dead, had been involved in at least 4 major cases where confessions were fabricated or beaten from prisoners.
A former friend of Perkins, Mike Chamberlain, went on TV and said,
He was a tough cop. His truth drug was his fist. He made it clear to me that he had beaten the confession out of Pat Malloy.
The prosecution case had completely collapsed, but British justice has still not seen fit to declare these men innocent and release them.
On February the 3rd, 1993, there was the following announcement from the Home Office.
The Home Secretary has said that nothing has emerged from his review of the case to cast doubt on the original convictions. On that basis, it would be wrong to refer the case back to the Court of Appeal or grant a pardon.
Not everyone agreed. On the 28th of May this year, Anne Whelan received the following letter.
Dear Mrs. Whelan, I was the foreman of the jury at your son's trial in 1979. I am completely convinced of Michael's innocence, and indeed all 4 of them. I have felt this for some time, and I wrote to the Home Secretary before he gave his most recent decision. It obviously had no effect.
On the 8th of June, a petition went in to the new Home Secretary, Michael Howard, demanding that the case be reopened. The men and their families are still waiting for his reply.
Vincent Hickey is 39 years old. He has spent 15 years in prison for a murder he didn't commit.
Jimmy Robinson will be 60 next birthday. He has spent 15 years in prison for a murder he didn't commit.
Michael Hickey is 31. He has been in prison since he was 17 for a murder he didn't commit.
And now I'd like you to welcome his mother, without whom none of us would be here, Anne Whelan.
During the last 15 years in prison, Michael has written much poetry. Some has been lost, some has been destroyed, and some has been saved. Some has been angry, and some has been quite sad. And I'm going to read this piece of poetry tonight. He wrote it with his girlfriend, who then was, in mind. And also, this is Michael's contribution to everybody here, saying thank you, and to all your support out there too. The poem is called Lost Love. Forgotten but bound, it's been soul-destroying, weakened by the years, strength to be a virtue of the past. Where was she when all alone? Sleepless nights, living during the day with its memories. Long days are old days. Both born under different signs of the zodiac, yet the same age in years. How many decades left in us before our passing away? Lapse of time was so precious. Tears must count as a relief to those stolen years apart. Grown up into a man from just a boy, she a woman. Hearts crushed by rage, fading memories in battle with hope. Yesterday, memories won. Today, it's hope. Tomorrow, maybe it's time to roll the dice. Childhood days were full of laughter, outspoken things to be remembered. Winters and summers, followed by the fashions we all come to know. Birthdays played their part, as if they were just an invited guest, just another one to add. Wiseness only begins to set when there was two to share it all. Break its relationship, and it will enhance the truth once shared. Develop your fortress, be not invaded by impostors, or ambushed by thoughts of loneliness. Preserve your oldness by saying, it will all begin again. If you've been lost, the maze will have two openings instead of one. Exit and entrance, the two E's binding your final obstacle. Maybe E for echo. Echo the past to the front, finding your beginnings again. And E for easy know-how, how to escape the burden of it all when you've found lost love.